You can grab a cushion in there. Grab a cushion.
Yeah.
Cushion, many chairs on the next chair on the. If you want a chair, you can sit on a chair.
Thank you. This is my second time here, so I'm still learning. I came here in the fall time. I met you guys walking with the dog, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you just walked down on Taylor Street. Yeah, I don't know if it's, I think it was him and somebody else. Thank you.
Well, we have completed explaining on the fourth verse, which is giving away to all sentient beings, your body, your positions, and your good gain in the past, present, and future, and protecting, purifying, and enhancing this. We have gone through that, what is meant by giving away to all sentient beings as one's body and one's resource or the positions and one's good gain. So now here the next verse it says, body and soul are given for the use of sentient beings. If they are not protected, how can they be used? If they can be used, what kind of gift is that? So now here, first of all, when we talk about giving away one's body to all sentient beings, and it is mentioned that you know we we should not think that whenever we want to give our body to others, we can give away. This is, however, not the case. One should know the appropriateness of time and the time and appropriate circumstances. And if if something that is appropriate time and appropriate circumstances is something that you are you are courageous enough to give away, then you could do so. Otherwise, it's just because the text mentioned that you should give away your body to others and all sentient beings. If without understanding the appropriateness of time, if one give away one's body and so on, may not be helpful. It applies same to the giving away one's position or one's resources.
다 로주세데 로주데 되는 숨고래 숨을 상보다면서 나고야 버져버려서 소소로 로주로 팀이 요이나 대 강주만요 밤에 로주 제주에 말해서 그래 이건 제바지라 마소지 봐도 숨마서 그래 다 뭐네 거기 소소 땅 근거시 가지 펜도요 봐 라지 거는 펜도요 봐 소소라 펜도요 봐 현래나 펜도요 봐 어떤데게 ene yingji de chena tene tamre so wale na ju so so rojo chebe yo ene tene de wale ya chibawe na wa kante jine ne ji chara thoya ge chembe ta banda ra da ye samale ya chuden ge chane ne so so ne na sa ji yo ya ge ri tene yo da chara so cheme tong na mo na sa le ge do ene tanaye taman cheme 동야나 간다야다 소소 최대한한데 소소 리야 소소 류를 내비 자와다다 쳇래야 어느 소소 변조 cheme 나야다 신의 뇌하게 자와다는 멤버를 전도래야 하는 소소 변조 반해지는 나야 어디서 무슨 말을 해서 그래 내가 카란데지네 소소 류를야 지 총어시 같은 돌아야 하는 소소 변조 동야 이 신뢰야 지 변도에 자와들 그렇게도 변조 당나 당야 어떤데지다 신체바지라 마소니 바다 신체바지 써야 돼다 간다 라다 신게 최다 포게 대지 부르다기 대지 중에다 대지 부르다기 인 어떤데 체바지 시야다면도 체바지 텐데지당 아니 체니 소소 당야 조나 소소를 변조도 당물에서 텐데지 마티지 받으려야 아니 밤에는 제주 말에 엔데 나고야 버져 슈마 마바야 엔데 인치바지다 지 인치바지다 아트다니 엔데 지가래야 나도 저래서 도스모요래.
So you say then, the body and so on given for the use of sentient beings, if they are not protected, how can they be used? So once one may find a contradiction between the two, because on the first verse it says you should give away your body to all sentient beings, your possessions and so on, right? Now next verse it says the body must be protected. So what it really suggested here in this this verse is we need to protect our body until you really think that it's the time that I can give away one's body. It cannot happen overnight. It requires a constant practice, whether you become so convinced that you can give away your body without any regrets and remorses. Until then, you need to protect your body. That's what it means. And then it goes same to the position or one's resources need to be protected. And until you find to give away one's resources that really becomes beneficial for oneself and that of others, then one should do so. And that also too requires flower practices. Without having adequate practice, one will not be able to engage in giving one's positions and one's resources to others, because we are, regardless of how generous we become, there will always be some kind of attachment string to it. It's an attachment that there's some kind of tinge of attachment always come along with it. Even though that you have your positions and your resources that you're fully committed to give away to others for others' benefit, but then there's some kind of attachment. Either this is what I am doing. This is actually form of attachment. I am the one who is doing that. I may become a very famous, or I may become someone who is well known as a generous person and so on. So this shouldn't be there when you are actually engaging in those, giving out one's body and one's position to someone. It should be completely unconditional.
다들 인도 다신 제바진 대다들 맞춰 있나요? 어느 소소문이 디공기로야 워치 라더제 엔데당 어느 소소 디공기로야 워치 제고요소상 어느 라니 체림고 대고에서 기침벌에 제가 소소 제와데 제와 상보를 두고 요소상 근데 제와 상보 중에 수이네요. 체림고 대고에 기침벌에 소소라의 뱅고를 이해나 뱅고로 와 내가 체림고 초와라 소소 트레이하고 보고 요소상 엔데다 제소소 체림고 대야 돼야 아니 제가 상보를 두고 비치는 체림고 대야 기침고 이마 체림고 초와 대야 은소소 류 대상에 보고 요봐 류 대상데 야고 요마나 카지를 하는 거 요봐 내가 그전에 때네 아니 소소 류 야고지 대상 요하고 제도 은소소네 제빈요는 거야나 그런 거죠 소소가 다 통해서 최단한 데는 때려봐 당시가 있나 은소소 류 대상요 류 대상요 같아서도 소소라는 소什么 错呀 라는 소리는 뭐 계속 쳐 대사도 소소문이 자와상고 아니 메이트니 도서 루에서다 엔텔렉션에 다나 비전도 그래.
So therefore, one way of understanding of protecting one's position and one's resources is that one should not use one's resources for something that is harmful to oneself. It may give a pleasure and some kind of, a pleasure and experience for time being, such as using one's resources for alcohol or any kind of, substances that actually ease one's mind for certain period of time. And so therefore, this one's resources should not be used for that. Because as we all know very clearly, that without a doubt, if one uses those resources for such, for purposes, then this is not actually happiness, but rather it is harming oneself. It will shorten one's lifespan. And even during one's lifetime, one will not have a healthy body and so forth. So therefore, one's protection of one's resources is that one should protect one's resources, but use one's resources for a right purpose, or the meaningful, use meaningfully or purposefully, such as becoming a condition for engaging in practice, from activities of virtuous activities and abandon of non-virtuous activities. So try one's resources to use for sustenance of one's lifespan, and free from sicknesses and so forth. But sustaining, from one's lifespan and free from sicknesses is not just mere you want to live in this world for a longer period of time and enjoy your life. This is not what, however, is not the case. But the sustenance of life is very much here is very much, emphasized in the context of having to have more time and to engage in the practice, so that you can perfect your practice of virtues and abandoning the non-virtuous activities.
다 되니 게자 송하세야들에 게자 송세야데 다 게자데 메바조야데 뭐 컨트롤 조거래 컨트롤 지원에 게자 종샤거래 제가 컨트롤 문종 왔지네 어느 게자 송거래 제가 야나 컨트롤 메지원 베트 제다 야나 게자데 컨트롤 문종 무도 스킬이야 뭐야서 그래 주야 어떤 게 나고 그래 제가 다 게자세야데 간데지는 다들 몸 통하지요 말해 소대야 게자세야데 그 니반도 보시다 무보이 바가이라 데민두지 레 루시카야마이 빈두지스 모바 티네제레 제가 게자세네데 마음바라니 단다라니 자와 zambo 제바게 제발 때니 된다게 니바 zam보제레 된 니바데 콘로드는 지와나 된 니바데요 정도 거예요 제가 다른 니바데 마도도 데데와는 모아파리야 제지도 태움도 그래 라니를 되게 대주 줘야겠다 사회적 거래 제가 제지도 모아파라니를 제지도 태움도 그래 된 니바데 제지도 태움도 그래 된 니바데 틀리 라니를 대진 좀 거래 제가 된 니바데 자자지 야보지 마송이나 근데 라니 줄에 콘로야 제로나 콘로 되게 게자도 넣는 거야 콘로 게자 좀도 삼보 간다는 정보는 때면서 계속 누구요 말때 게자 니바 되게 라니를 모아발에 되지 좀 두야 그러려야 니바들 니바들 니면서 샤워다 니바 면서 샤워 어디네 이제 콘로 문종와 수마스라고 다 콘로 문종와 수마들라 야나 랑구줄 콘로 야면 저 되지야다 야나 되게자데 콘로게 좀 못하게 아니 유지리야서래 되네지리 쭉 제단데 다라니 저 콘로 야면 제대로 더 카본을 도와 콘로 야면 지고 야다 콘로를 좀 뭐래 콘로 제사고 여기 제가 문화 무슨 거래 베나라니 콘로 제사고 요 아니 다 남주니 시원에 자주 써봐 서울에 제가 살아내면 자주 써봐 드날에 콘로 제와나 하자기 아니 슈치모 콘로 슈치모 써봐래 되게 되네. 가봐 동잘 사be 계산하는 좀 해서 그래. 근데 되나 이게 사람이 장치도 많이 봐야네. 저 전화한다 전화한테 전내는 장치도 말 거리지 와야네. 때는 밥에 계산 좀 도를. 되네 라마쇼 가다 있나야. 제 소소를 중세 안에 안 보셔 되려야 거리지 와야네. 그래서 때는 밥에 좀 도를. 소소리 이 도세 진입에 봐줄 거리지 와야네. 때는 밥에 계산 좀 도를. 아다 거리 지지지나고 되게 최종마다 계산 용어되고요. 제가 말한 거 자와서 뭐 마무리 누구예요? 얘는 저한테 마무리 누구예요? 계산 마무리 싸고 이럴 때 소속이 약고지 단을 채마도 약고지 숨마도 지네. 얘는 배 걸리 저 자와서 뭐 제 계산이 싸 대야 공도 있긴 되다가 내가 자샤고 제가 되게 대나하게 모습 계산이 약고지야. 손톱으로 제가 계산 숨마세요. 공도 없는 좀 아니, 야구지 손톱에 찍어서 해서.
So then, protecting one's virtues or the mirrors of 3 times. You look at the verse where it says the body and so on. So, body and so on is the body, one's position or resources, one's good gain, which is referring to one's mirrors, or virtues, merit that one have gained by means of engaging in virtuous activities. That is what is meant by the mirrors. And this should be protected here. So now, how do we actually protect our mirrors that we have gained, by one's practice or by engaging in all these virtuous activities? How do we protect that? It is the main protection of one's mirrors is to refraining from getting angry. That is the main source. Because anger is something that is very powerful. It can just, destroy all the mirrors that one may have, accumulated for many, many eons. Versus, although the merits or the virtue is not something that something that can be seen. It is something that can be touched. It is, in fact, it is neither consciousness nor form kind of phenomena or entity. The virtue exists in a form of potency or propensity or imprints. So this imprints can be completely destroyed only by anger. So therefore, one should always try one's best to engage in the practice of not letting that anger enter into one's continuum. Because regardless of how much merits or the virtue that one may have accumulated in the past, if one let this anger roam in our mind, then we will have no result. We will not experience any result of our virtues because it has already been destroyed. The actual result which has a power to give rise to its result is actually completely eradicated. So therefore one should not let anger come into one's mind. This is something that is very important. It's not easy practice for us either because anger comes in our mind if you think about a day and in a single day, that we will not be able to count. There's all kind of angers. Very intense to mild and a very subtle level of anger that comes into our mind. And so those are all really bad condition for our virtues. So therefore, by recognizing that, one should always look at this anger as a as an entity that actually put oneself into a very dear consequences. So therefore, one should always look at this anger as something that is harmful to us. So so in here now, when we talk about anger that actually destroys our entire virtue, there is anger, many different levels of angers. In other words, to whom you actually generated anger, the object to whom you generated anger. For instance, if one generates anger towards bodhisattvas who are already on the bodhisattva's ground, starting from first to 10th ground, right? Then that's this, the moment of anger can destroy the merits that we have accumulated for even thousands of years. Says. And then if someone who is, and then also someone who is not on the bodhisattva's bhumi, who is not in the bodhisattva's ground, but who is entered into the bodhisattva's path, such as individual who is on the path of preparation or the path of accumulations. This will also have a very big consequences to having generated anger towards those will also destroy our great deal of our merits. And not only that, but also someone who is not entered into the path, someone who is a practitioner to whom we generate anger will also have even very great deal of consequences that one need to experience. And not only that, but also in ordinary beings, even someone who is very ordinary like ourselves, one generates anger towards those. This will also destroy our merits. Although it will not as powerful destroyer as you generate anger towards bodhisattva soul. As long as you have generated anger always has sudden power to destroy the sudden merits and virtue that one have accumulated. So so then it says the best way to protect our virtue and best way to protect our merits is to always safeguarding our mind, not letting the anger enter into our mind. So this is how we protect our virtues of 3 times.
당어도 계산을 좀 되지디 뭐가 지야들에 저도 뭐가 지야들더니 제산직 때문에 지쳐도 뭐하고 라면 조정도 뭐하고 어떤 데요래 저도 또 단안에 야준을 붙이 라면 조정도 뭐하래 세저단지 라면 조배 장주 토야가 줄야 뭐가 있나 아니 세저단지 라면 조정 마도지 봐도 아니 계산도 세고 말해서 도선 거요래 얘네들이 얘네 joya me pare joya me mare yate jota de ya nyumet ke so go marte tu sama che ore tu de rundo to sa sango yore de ni dan de ya te ya hu ji karna ane to ne to be shere ke sen sa me ke che ju so go ta de che le mi zo jang do mo yi ba ka ji la en den de ji mo ya ke sa da 어느 뭐 바라니 당마서 그 다 탐지 어느 라면이 좀 도장면서 어느 벽에 돈을 또 싫어하고 제대로 돈이 어느 뭐 같이 봐 있나 근데 좀 말해서 뭐 가인하고 대 생계기로 돈을 또 싫어한데 어느 쇼치 뭐이 받아 대 무인의 수 정말 지지 동이 이거 들어야 아니 대 누가 매번 소야게 로 들어야 와지게 매려와 계산 로야 답아지도 대 누가 매번 소야는 거다 되게 들어 가진서 그래 들니 보게 말해 내일도 된대로 쇼치 보게 세즈미 토니 레메도 좀 뭐이나 엔티게자데 그냥 뭐 말해 때문에 그래서 제가 한만서 저와 zambo니 니레시도 두고 요런데 저와데 마중을 해서서 도단이나 저와니서 도마 코노야 보여 저와 때 라지고 제가 많이 봐 저는 세제 탐지에 벽에 이 체도 이봐 세제 탐지 벽에 대중형 체도 이봐 아니 주셔도 니시와는 세제 탐지 산지 고만에 우여 체도 이봐 대체도 라니 산지 고만 더 보여서 라니 산지 고만 더 체도 이봐 대략 뭐가 제친 거지다 안 담아 모아만 해봤지 자와서 모두 주변지를 때 자와대 아니 따라테니 사베 계산 상보대 세제 탐지 산지 고만 더 하고 주는 주어쇼 대양 아니 지금 뭐에 제가 뭐 보다 뭐서 요 다다 담지 에는 라문이 좀 어떠냐 매서 동안에 개퇴지 때부터는 어두도 뭐이나 엔데게서데 시민 좀 하도 템포시 되고 그래서 어두운 거로 대소만 하지 말도 나주 소소게 제와서 뭐 그렇게 그래 지금 주소는 거지 이런 토를 배듯이 제도에는 배워야 돼.
So one thing that one can protect one's virtue is by dedications. Will dedicate your virtues. Will then be able to preserve your whatever the virtue that one may have accumulated, the virtues or the merits that one may have accumulated, can be preserved without undergoing deteriorations by angers and so on. Because as soon as one finish engaging in some virtuous activities, the wholesome activities, and then dedicate that wholesome activities, but dedication will then preserve one's virtue, but will not let it undergo deterioration or undergo declination by angers and so forth. So dedication is something that's again very, very important. So the way in which we do the dedication here is now one should dedicate one's merits towards achievement of enlightenment oneself. In other words, may whatever the virtuous deed I may have done in the past, in the present, and whatever the virtuous deed I will be conducting in the future, may I collect all of them and dedicate towards achievement of enlightenment of myself and that of all other sentient beings. This will really it will remain your, virtue or the merit very firm, so that it will become so adamant, so it cannot be destroyed by. There's no such force that can be destroyed your merits and virtue. And then also, if it is possible, one's very dedication is imbued by wisdom realizing emptiness or wisdom realizing ultimate nature of reality, then it will then become really, indestructible. Your virtuous deed or your merits will become indestructible. It will remain there and whenever the appropriate condition is met, and you will be experiencing the result of that virtue. So therefore, it says, whenever we engage in the practice, there's two things that is very important. The first is to have appropriate motivations of practice, and having done this practice, then dedication at the end. And it is also called three activities. It's also called three activities. Activities in the beginning, which is having pure motivations, and then having generated these pure motivations and one engages in the actual actions. It must be very pure, should not be influenced by any other negative thoughts and emotions. And once you have completed the practice, then at the end, dedications. Those are the three things that we need to complete to become one's virtue very firm and have a potential to give rise to its result in the future.
단단히 이제 먼저 소소 류인의 로주인의 계산인의 다 담지 제 순구역 전제라고 된 대중은 소만하지 세제거나 세제남이 로주 질러서 소만자세야 류소위가 있는다 로주소위가 있는다 계산소위가 있는다 제 소원으로데 세제남지에 그 로주 제동 순구역서 소원이 제동 많이 봐 세제남지 뭐야 제 도덕을 로주역 제동이 류소위가 로주소위가 계산소위가 마음바라야 소소 체면이야 진료신 다이나다 먼저 다이는 게다 다이나다 소소 체들 담아도이네 저 소소 매바차스미 지리네 인소소 진료디야 고로 술 공부하나 애들 저기 있어도 먼저이네 뒤고서 아니 술 펜한테 지에 있어도 아니 게자디네 뭐봐 제서 제단에 산지고 도야가 주다 세단이 뭐서 그래 어디네 저 다이에서 어디내지다 다져와는 야고요래 제가 신전남지로 주치 빌어서 나와자스 어디 저번에 수만나시 상하는 게 뭐래.
So if you look at the verse where it says the body and soul are given for the use of sentient beings, right? It is because of our body and body resources, virtue and so on, are used for for the use, are given for the use of sentient beings, then this needs to be protected. So, so one should always, think of that. May very sustenance of this body can be benefited other sentient beings. The body that I have, may this become beneficial for others. And this kind of mindset should be built in oneself all the time. And if one is able to do that, then it actually protects one's body. And it actually protects oneself. We are completely committed to everything that you have. It's actually thinking of, or purpose of, it's happiness for other sentient beings. And this really gives you a sense of selflessness. And this selfless act of either this act of body or speech or mind will give you a completely, sort of a different result. Normally we talk about this is selfless act, but then there's always some kind of, attachment or something, kind of, the sense of egoistic is always tinged to that whenever we do something. But if one is able to do everything that is free of that, then it will give you a completely different result. And the experience that you have will be unexplainable. It is cannot express the experience that we have. So therefore, it's always, one's think of that one's very purpose of having this body, very purpose of protecting this body is for the benefit of other sentient beings, as it's mentioned in the text itself. And similarly, it goes to one's resources. The reason why I have to protect the resource is to protecting my resource. It is just for the benefit of other sentient beings. And then one's virtues of 3 times, the past, present, and future. All the virtues that I have, may I be able to, dedicate these virtues, which is the way of protecting your virtue, right? Dedicate towards enlightenment of one, dedicate towards the unsurpassable enlightenment of oneself and that of all other sentient beings.
다들 마송 로주 강리 모세들 마송 로주 강리 모세들 가르치거나 다들 소소를 유디하게 류래 로주래 계자래 대다 야보지 송의 마도 마송 로주 강리 제가 내 소소를 류려고 지바이냐 아니 단단 말도 류 나시데 야야 유한 가보라 봐 단단 말도 메이트는 제 그다음에 제 엄보창 등에 어느 건다 제 야보지 여러 봐 제가 다 마음 팔이야 말도 되는 류 장고지 엄보창지 떠받는 용거를 했나 남이 추문이 시간 하작하고 예수 거래 제가 단단 무조건 때인데 추진이 때인데 메이트인데 아니 메이트 나니 좀 아니 최초로 저거지 예서 그래. 그래서 나와 제가 저거 쭉 타야게 돼. 나서 뭐래. 그래서 대대게 때인데 야야토를 하장 가고 예서 그래. 그래서 다저 내가 살아남을 봐서 하장 내가고 야야 내가고 예서 그래. 다른 내가 되게 사유를 니만 거지. 지금 무슨 말로 이제 쓰려서는지 되지 해서 그래. 지난 무슨 바지 스바 차원도 항상 주로 봐. 전화기 지해서 그러잖아. 주요거냐 하정내 가고 배우거든 내가 뭐요거든 내가 도지는 송고를 다 좋아하네. 저도 방문이 시주지는 된다고 요래. 제가 모두 류에 야야들아 하정내 가고래. 내 카드 대화도 내 가고래서 많이 봐. 로더를 비고도 하네. 또 제바지 시주지로 있나? 제야 되는 제래. 제가 내가 이제 야보지 송거래서 야보지 마송이나 근데 야야한테 내가 말해서 제가 근데 야보지 마송이나 야야 내가 인도고 데려 야보지 마송은 주만 내가를 납셔와 아니 야야 내가 봐이 봐 근데 된 정보를 통해 되니 봐 야보지 송거래 야보지 마송이나 하면 이제 제가이나 그래 아니 시행을 계약이 말아와서 마송을 줘 가는 제 소소를 여대하고 류야고도 야보지 마구나 아니 야야 내가 말이네 기다 가르쳐 가서 어때서 뭐래 저다 류대 하자게 저와서 모두 동행게 류 단들 류하고 류대 하자게 저와서 뭐 해봐 대야야들아 내가 가고 해봐 엔다린 내가 가려 야보지 무슨 말도 있나 아니 얘네야 얘게 요마로 저다 얘는 좀 봐라 엔테다 소다고 야고 얘네 아니 주망문에 시안에 제하게 되려보나 거진 줘요 줘와 단다 야고지 소소 다나 마지어지 마송하지 한도 제바이나 르데 아니 처럼도 소이나 아니 야야는 맨에 아니 얘는 제하게 하면서 근데 마송을 주고 강리 우문세야 르르 자와이나 어디 르데 자와치고 해봐 야야 맨에 봐 안다는 내가 야고지 송고 해봐 야보지 마소나 아니 옛날이야 로주야 치도 제야메가 차로야 어디를 해서 말해.
So if they are not protected, how can they be used? But this needs to be protected here, because the very protection of one's body, one's the body that we have right now. It's again not only this need to be protected by, we're not talking about just to protect it by means of maintaining our health and so forth. But this again needs to be protected by means of engaging in all kind of virtuous activities. That's also required to by using one's body, if one's able to engage in wholesome actions, that is one way of protecting one's body. It's a very important that if one is unable to protect one's body by using this body engaging in wholesome activities or the virtuous activities, and such, human body, in other words, this cannot be, it cannot be achieved overnight. It cannot be achieved every now and then. It's not often that we can take a rebirth as a human beings, in other words. In fact, according to Dharma, where it says human rebirth is something that is very, very precious, but it's very difficult to acquire, very, very difficult to achieve. And particularly the rebirth with complete characteristic of 8 leisure and 10 endowments are very, very difficult to find. So therefore we find in many texts by the great masters says this human rebirth with this endowment is hard to find, but it never lasts long. So therefore, make one's human rebirth meaningful and purposeful in recognition of how precious it is. So this is how we protect our body. And it's very, very precious. If one is unable to protect one's body in this way, by engaging in virtuous deeds and so forth, and we're simply not protecting our body, and we will not have, and such rebirth will not be obtained in the future. It's almost impossible. It looks almost impossible for us to achieve such a rebirth with complete attributes, as we talked about the 8 leisure and 10 endowments. So it is not just saying that human rebirth is something that is difficult to acquire. There's no any justifications, but rather if you look at the text and the teachings of the great beings of the past, they have numerous reasonings and the quotes, reasonings, and there's reasonings, logical reasonings, as well as the scriptural reasonings are all, elaborately, founded in the great texts written by the great masters. So therefore, it is to make one's human rebirth, one's body meaningful and purposeful, one should always protect. The protection here, mainly to protecting one's body by not letting our body engaging in negative deeds.
다데나 얘기 로주이네요. 안에 여보선 그래요. 제가 로주 세야 아버 요뱅이 방만도와 소설 논주 유래시도 강요바데 아니 야보주 송니 제마도이나 아니 따바야 용세도 공부를 미박에 말로 대주 소설 논주 유비가래 안데 야보주 송거래 마도 야보주 마송이나 아니 주마 시에는 지야 매바 차로 그래서 소설 유대한테 밤에는 이제 되면 도지니 도샤와이나 아니 문에 주마 지금 제발 제대로 체력 거래야 다른 것도 해준데 다 도와서 다 다양하게 모두 선선아 자원을 제서 이제 제발 제대로하게 그게 제발 제대로 저도 많이 비 되면 그때 밤에는 줘서는 된다 당주 말해서 노주에서 대야이네 가디나 용하지 말해서 소소를 용비 그래 대야고 줬어 아니 비 되다 틈바 비지 아니 야고 줬어 어도 제거래서 그나 맞이와 이나는 주망문에 방에 소소 노주 친구세 지들레 비거야 땅 지들레 비거야 되네 다음에 차로 그래서 또
So then similarly it goes to our resources. The one's resources must be protected. Protected by means of utilizing our resources in an appropriate manner, in other words, and using one's resources meaningfully and purposefully is a way of protecting our resources. Because without, having, in other words, used very sensibly, because if one is unable to use one's resource meaningfully and purposefully, if one just use lavishly, then there will be no benefits of oneself, and also this will not benefit others. Certainly, not benefit others, other beings. So therefore, one should, protect one's resources by using one's resources meaningfully and purposefully, and so that if one is able to use one's resources meaningfully and purposefully, then whenever one met with condition of using one's resources towards the merit, which become a source of merits. In other words, one can then make good use of one's resources. So therefore, it actually, the meaning of protecting one's resources is mainly emphasizes on using one's resources meaningfully and purposefully.
다른 얘기에 다르게 게타의 소속이 가디네 자와선도 가버로 제가 자와선도 부리시도 소속에 사용을 대야고죠 손 안에 야고죠 뭐 어떻게 제가 맞네 슈마 안에 야당 그살레베 그래 타임에 봐 지여고 게사데 야고죠 마오와제 안에 컨트롤 맞아야지나 안에 게사데 조로이나 안에 슈마문이 가게 당부에서 레벨을 다음에 차로로 제가 내주 게다이나야 마음바 아니 얘네 야고지 땅투에 제도 아니 야고지 송고리에스 제가 가문 줘봐 지지 지니세 제대로 안에 류이나 로주이나 게다이나 저도데 요리지도 야고지 송 나나 야고 맞잖아 근데 슈마 소설 되는 류야메 로주라메 게다이나 ene karijingi ba jiya ke mewas otos moyar.
And it says that they can be used. What kind of gift is this? So if one is unable to protect one's body, unable to protect one's resources, and unable to protect one's virtuous gain in the good gain in the text, it says good gain in the past, present, and future, and what kind of gift that is left to be given to others. So now it goes same to the virtue, the good gain that we I would say this is merits of the virtue. The good king, he refers to the virtue, and there's a virtue. So whatever the virtue that one may have, the root of virtue that one may have, that should be protected by dedicating, as we talked about earlier, by dedicating one's virtue towards enlightenment of self and other beings. Because we as ordinary beings, it is not that we are constantly accumulating virtue, not at all. We have a certain time, in a very fraction of time, that we accumulate merits. It's a very precious time. And once you have already accumulated that merits, then this needs to be dedicated in order to protect the merits of the virtue that you have accumulated. And so if one is unable to protect one's merits by dedicating by dedications, then what is left for there to be given to others in the future, in other words, for the benefit of other beings, that is what it means. Because one's virtue will become in order to make one's virtue productive, it requires a dedication. Here now, when we talk about dedication, it's not simply just dedicating, but when you are dedicating, you are actually giving up everything that your body, spirit, and mind, giving up everything, with a wholeheartedly. It really, such dedication will really become a good condition for training our mind, and it actually matures our mind. So therefore, all those virtues, deeds of the 3 times accumulated must be dedicated. The dedication is the main, it is a main condition that actually protect your virtues.
他不是哲人呢，哲真家。
So we can take the questions. Any questions? Anyone have questions? We'll take some questions. Yes.
You said you spoke of that with pure motivation, the accumulations of wisdom and the virtuous actions is a way for us to protect our bodies, speech, and mind for the benefit of all sentient beings. Can you say more about the wisdom piece? Oh, because you mentioned that those together is the indestructible.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's like again, the 개와 흥업을 가봐야 지난 경우에 한다지 개와 조장 모여서 계신 순으로 와서 근데 단연절에 조장 경우에 다 개와 스스로의 개와 강사가 되게 이제 지금 때문에 중요해야 저기 이제 돈이도 비싸게 있으면 거니 돈이도 그거 있으면 거니 이제 뭐래나 안돼 때문에 가서 야다 시작도 하나 그래서 저다 다 돈이도 비게 제가 되거니야 되시 됐으나 좀 나왔을 수 있겠죠.
돈이도 비셔를 대대주당 단주로 시작하는 시작은 다돈으로 데려와 단주로에 안에 때나 보셔줘. 그래서 단주 그런 데야 동반이 다저 돈이 나와서야 돼. 아니야. 진짜 돈이 나와서 그래서 뭐 따와더라. 여기 따와도 저기 따와니 이럴 때 하면서 지금 얘네야 보여래. 나중에 돈이 있다왔으니 인식이 시대 걸고 지금 돈이 있다왔어야 돼. 다 여기 있다와도 이제 있다와 니요래. 나다 먼저 교환 조정 뭐 그래. 돈이 있다와 세상 레서 돈이 있다와데 이제 있다와데 소소줄이 지에 여기 돈이 있다와데 여기 있다와서야 돼. 추나지 그렇게 라시아 어떻게 내는 타도 돼. 파고는 거래. 또 돈만 있으면 이제 있다와서야 돼. 근데 동반이 또 배기 싫어 치가지다 이제 있다와서 대마도 줄 지에 요래. 제가 대마도 줄 지에니 되게 세세면 돈이 아니 괜찮은 거 알아. 제가 다 너무 유지다와 되게 다와 인터넷이나.
So the wisdom we talked about earlier, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So here again, the emptiness, explanation of emptiness can be varied by depending upon the different philosophical tenets, or philosophical views. There are different ways of accepting, even within Buddhist philosophical schools, they have a different way of accepting emptiness. So here I will be explaining based on Madhyamaka Prasangika's point of view. So Madhyamaka Prasangika's point of view here. Now, first of all, when it comes to the emptiness, which is also called perfect view, the perfect view are two different. It can be primarily divided into two. Into two, and one is the objective perfect view, and other is subjective perfect view. So now, what is meant by objective perfect view is the mode of actual existence is objective perfect view, mode of existence, or ultimate nature of reality. How things really are is the objective reality. And the subjective perfect view, the subjective perfect view refers to the wisdom that realizes, wisdom that ascertains that ultimate nature of reality is subjective perfect view. So repeat once again, because it is important. Repeat once again. Objective perfect view is how things really are. And subjective perfect view is the realization of that perfect view. Realization of that objective perfect view, which is how things really are.
제가 다 동반이 있어야 돼. 제가 배박 쓰지는 동반이 있어야 돼. 매발 거고래. 매발 거고 때 매발은 자초래 거다죠. 그렇죠? 얘네 대한 동반이 있어서 뭐 매당도 갈 때 영어도 하고 그래. 가이가 동반이 있어서 뭐네. 말아서 너희들이 대사 칸바 요래. 철랑가 요래. 자강 총가 요래 뭐고 요래가 다 동반이 레즈인데 그래서 이제 때는 매바 그래서 대한 매바 이거잖아. 근데 되는 때 하나 말해. 지난 동반이 있어야 돼. 동반이 있어야 돼. 남이 주는 동반이 있어야 돼. 가려고는 지난 매바를 해서 그래. 동반을 해서 그래. 근데 대래 동반이 이면 가는 동반에서 뭐 라면이 주가 그래. 라면이 주가 동반에 라면이 주가 때니 매바래. 라면이 주가 때니 매바 코나래. 라면이 주가 매바 코나래. 매바 바이래. 살아와 녀서야 돼. 지구당 바이당 그날 거고 저 동반 녀서 뭐 라면이 주가 주다지 라면이 주가 때 매바 코나래. 주다지 라면이 주가 때 매바 지고래. 또 살아와. 제가 아무 춘이지 동반이 있어야 돼. 라면이 주면 동반이 스텔바냐고 그래. 저당이 알아서 뭐 강토마다 라바 강레 이거 참아 요르네 요래. 뭐 요리 저때 요리 무슨 너 요리 계시고를 내고를 차도 요리 더 메스라고요 말해. 더 요리 때 이내 요타를 가는 요리나 라문이 마주페 근데 또비 다 잠지문이 요대야. 마다 지금 라문이 주고 요대가 많이 봐. 라문이 주고 매대야. 어떤데 지 서거래. 다들 간도 동반 예세야 돼. 라문이 주고 동바세 되는지라고 그랬어.
So first, what is subjective emptiness? We touched a little bit about this earlier. That is actual mode of existence of things in event, right? Mode of ultimate nature of phenomenon, ultimate nature of reality. So here now, objective perfect view is also known as emptiness. So now, sometimes when we talk about emptiness, we think of something that doesn't exist, right? Well, it is the term itself is emptiness, and the Bible is tongpanyi. It is, it is empty, which the term itself talks about something that doesn't exist at all. So now, the crucial thing that we need to understand here is now we're not really talking about something that doesn't exist. We're not talking about something it is lack of existence. We're talking about emptiness. Empty of what? That this should be asked. First of all, the question should be asked. Because normally when we talk about emptiness, we keep talking about emptiness without going through our explanations. And people may think this is something nihilistic. Because we're talking about something that exists where we're not rejecting the existence of everything. Which is not right, because however we see everything in front of ourselves, the table in front of ourselves, the object that is on the tables can be seen, can be touched. There's a road, there's cars, vehicles moving all over. All these activities, we're not saying those are not exist at all. The reason what doesn't exist is what is empty of what is empty. So what is meant by emptiness, or empty of what? Empty of intrinsic existence. That is what is meant by emptiness. Emptiness, empty of independent existence. Empty of not depending upon others. There's no such things that exist independently, regardless of what kind of object that may be. Because to us, when we look at it as ordinary beings, when we look at things, and things always appear to us independently and objectively. However, it's not so. If you really look at these things that appear to us, is that really exists as it appears to our perception? It's not so. This is completely. There is a big gap between how things appear and how things really are. So, so therefore, emptiness. In brief, the emptiness must be understood in terms of lack of intrinsic existence, lack of independent existence. We have a saying that, I'm independent. We claim ourselves. Well, if we really think very carefully, how can we claim ourselves as independent? Think about the clothes that we are wearing. Think about the things that we have. We are depending on others. Suddenly we're dependent on. We never think of that. When we think that we have food to eat, we have a shelter to save ourselves, and we think that I'm independent, which is completely wrong view. It's a completely wrong concept. So this is the Buddhist, it's a rough explanation of what is meant by emptiness, and in Buddhism, and the emptiness is taught by the great teachers of the past.
전대에 때문에 벽에 또만이 공이 있는 도몽을이야. 답이무는 말이 봐. 뒤무는 좀아예 소만아 얘기. 도몽을에 대버주가 지 여바이나 장은이 주가 여바이나 간다지 요거를 등모습도 뭐지 제오래. 제가 대버주가 지도 여 말했대. 계속 아바타도 그래서 계속 여바이나 내가 요거를 해서 도몽을에 대버주가 두세는 거서 그래. 내가 요 있는 데가 요거를 해서 대체도 뭐하구나 데미텔 보통 매서 거죠. 다음에는 말을 받기 있는 좀 많이 상하지. 당을 뭐서 해당을 받지 오늘 동반이 마시는 거래요. 오늘 한번 주고 연나 데가 요거를 때문에 시작하고 그래.
가지도 쓴 거로.
같이 되는데.
So here now, in order to understand emptiness, first of all, where it says this object of negation must be understood. What we're negating, this need to be understood. So now think about that. If things really exist intrinsically, how it would be, how it must be exist. We should think about that. If there really exists intrinsically, is there anything that is in any existence, there's some kind of intrinsicness, the nature of intrinsicness is there or not? We should examine that very carefully. And so in other words, if things really exist without depending on its own other condition, in other words, other parts and, causes and conditions, and how these things can be. Is there really possibility that things really exist independently? So it requires a lot of analytical meditations. And so when you are going through such analysis, it is a really good exercise for our mind.
담아라도 도몽을 해야 가져대로 유연되게 요구를 해서 가세로 있는 배는 말한서 간해주는 말한서 다 가져대로 요가 있는 배는 뛰면서 와시요. 뛰면서 와지. 뛰면서 와서 요가 가기는 이해는 뛰버치는 봐. 라게도가 참아 소설에 창대게 시행 뛰버치는 봐. 시행 뛰어치는 봐. 때려서 뛰면서 와지. 그러면 요걸 라게도가 요걸 제가 말한 것보다 너무 더 대하다 라베르 요바 간대지 바이나야 바이류 제로인도 신유 제로이나 대를 얘기하는 마디가 라와 준비하면도 그냥 말한 소리잖아 말도 더 간대 준 말이 파만일 때는 좀 말아 근데 파만일 때는 준비 그래 돈만 제일 충분히만 매와 근데 와마테 그서 와마테 와다 가르 제가 되더니 근데 리베르 시할 때네 상용도 봐. 준비다. 다 단대에 소소소 좋아라 칼라 사고도 와다지 내가 제고도 뭐 이때는 말 초고도 뭐도 말도 가만히 맞대 봐 나와지. 소소이네 대통령들이 yen다 소소 뭐주에 출간했네요. 지금 중화의 시라서 서 대달이 편수 뒤때 그럴 때는 지금 그러야지 맞아 지금 뛰어가다 때봐 가야 많이 그게 되는 라자와 라와 뒤에 라와지 취지야 만도와 근데 취지야 내가 여서 취단지 뒤에 라와 지야 만도스 참아 때마다 뒤에 되는 때는 부샤와서 되는 근데 라문이 마주어서 뭐 뒤에 라와 그런문이 부가야 만도스 어떠라고 그래
So now when we are talking about that emptiness of intrinsic existence or emptiness of true existence. Now, the intrinsic existence and the true existence is the object that needs to be negated. And that's what we're negating. The primary negation is that we're targeting to negate that true existence or the intrinsic existence of things in event. So now, how do we negate? Is first of all think about ourselves. We were born, and our very birth doesn't happen intrinsically. It doesn't happen, without depending on any causes and conditions. There's no such word can be applied in reality to become oneself as independent at all. There's no such thing that exists independently. Think about ourselves right from the beginning of our birth. We're depending upon our very birth is depending upon our parents. And then they brought us up, fed us, nurtured us, and even training parties and so on and so forth. Everything that the me or I that exists right now is all dependent upon others. There's no such thing that exists independently at all, as we think always. Everything that exists are depending upon its own causes and conditions, or its own, depending upon other factors. Its very existence is depending upon other factors, and depending upon four elements such as fire, wind, water, soil, earth, and so forth. So there's no such phenomena down to atoms that exist independently. So that is what is meant by emptiness here. So it requires a lot of mental exercise to really think about ourselves. Normally when things appear to us, we take it for granted. We just believe and we just think that's really there. Whatever that appears to me, what things that appears to me is the ultimate nature of reality. What that appears to me is reality. However, it's not so. Because everything that appears to us, it appears to us as intrinsic existence, appears to us as independent existence. But if you really, examine very carefully, there's no such things that really exist independently. Everything, dependent upon either its own parts or either other factors, or it dependent upon its own causes and conditions. So therefore, if one really think about beginning from one's own birth, how it really exists. Is it really exists as if that I think that what that appears to oneself? And those are all, mental exercise. And, in other words, analytical meditations that requires for us to discover what emptiness really is.
마저라고 가지 가는지 이면 정말 유열했을 때 유가 캐내고 여다데 라면 주고 주요는 유가 말해 여다가 가는 또비 따선 주요가 되는지에서 또비 따선 이번 또비 따서야 돼요 컨티넨트 따와 되는지 말해 얘네가 또비 따서야 가는 그냥 말은서 무슨 소리 다 가면 따기 미를 열어봐 자신이 되는 있는 미다고도 봐 그래서 그 라면 주고 지이나 정말 제대니 미타 먹고 다가라 이거 그래. teremde omuzo 그거들 아면은 제대로 제대로니 도와서 미진 따고 도. 그래서 대미데 강사지 그 토픽 그걸 따봐라. 대따보니 그 무슨 데 강사들이야. 대신에 되게 들을 그런 게 나이 이상하지 이다가 거래서 하지. 따가로 그러고 저지네 퇴직이 제가 들고 제가 다가로 집에 그 제어로 저 뒤에도 그 지에서 토픽을 봐. 다시가 이번에 저도 세보라 주고요.
And also, at a subtle level of understanding of emptiness is that emptiness mere imputed by term and concept. Everything that exists mere imputed. That's a mere imputation, in other words. Imputed by concept and term. So the very existence of everything significant are mere imputation. There's no such thing that exists objectively. It is imputed by term. For instance, someone whose name is probably, just taking myself as an example, that Nima is, when someone called me that, I think that when someone expressed term Nima, then I respond to that, but then that is imputed upon me. It's not, I'm not intrinsically Nima at all. If it is so, then I'll have a lot of other names. I can be Nima everywhere. Because if something that exists as it imputed, and it exists intrinsically, then there will be no name. There's no such name can be changed. The name is not changeable at all. Because we change our name. And at one time I can be called Nima, another time I can be called David. So if I'm intrinsically Nima, independently Nima, how can I be a David or other thing? So it is all the way that we impute the concept, the imputing of imputed by concept and the term. So and then one very good example that we think of is, talk about tomorrow, right? It's something that's very important. It's very, very interesting. As if that we're experiencing it. But if you really think very carefully, when are you actually experiencing tomorrow? When? You can't say I'm experiencing right now, because that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't exist you experience right now, that doesn't make sense, isn't it?
Right.
But there is a tomorrow. But it's mere imputed by concept and a term. The term that is tomorrow. Also, I prepare for tomorrow. But we don't know when we're going to experience tomorrow. When will really pinpoint that is tomorrow. So this is how our concept of emptiness is related to emptiness of Buddhist teachings.
That's my question.
Yes, absolutely.
I came across this term in Sanskrit. It's amrita, which is a nectar. And
Amrita,
I think it's Lucy or Tusi in Tibetan.
Tusi, yes.
And what I was wondering that is, in that term, how it relates, because it relates to the inexhaustible nectar, how that is that similar to the indestructible clear light mind?
Okay.
Because it seems, I just wanted to ask this question mainly. The reason why I'm asking this is because I want to know that, do you need to have an affirming negation before you have a non-affirming negation? Or does it matter which one comes first or second?
You mean you said this Amrita?
And that's in relation to the nectar, yeah.
Yes.
If it's the blessings, uplifting radiance of the blessings, then that means that you're taking the worst, the negative, and you're transforming it into the positive. And so that to me seems like it's an affirming negation, but then you have to negate that too. And
So you mean this Amrita, you think this Amrita is an affirming negation?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm wondering if that's needed in order to get to the non-affirming. Thank you.
Kuma shi shira dewa shira dan jema de yang ko di dewa condition ngi shira ko so. 되게 싶었는데 근데 개발계야 그게 먼저 아메리카에서 쇼와 주지 근데 주지 대 양호 아메리카에서 주지 세게 되어 이제 이 들어도 왔는데 내가 마인가 기지 되어서 거들 내가 마인가 대티가 레스터 수는 무슨 이니다 거 되어지 되어서 되려셔 아메리카 세계인데 고 가지 되게 돈에 주지 돼야지 고 좋아야면 시다 고 가서래 그 완전히 그 처음에는 매기 되지 가서 세대들이라 나면 매기 되지라 다 이게 봐지다 어디 쓰고 맨날 거 되는 통인다 근데 nessus 그래서 다티 뒤지세야지 고다 처음에 뒤지시하는 건데 뒤지디 고 되는이야 먼저 근데 왜서 해봐 왜서 생각하지 마세요.
그래서
또 왜서 자기 코디나는 질도 가서 나왔다 야는데 그리다 왜서 나기 왜서 세죠 어디 팀으로 something loose. 팀이야 진호니 할 거지 아주 저스 같은 거를 티 거지 메가를 마인가를 야면은 니 직시에 다른 곳에 무슨 얘네 자꾸 되어지더래 가
아무다 제가 대체를 막 그게 아무다 그런 하나 너무 배서 아무다 대체라고 배우리나 대체때 회사 세대 말에 회사 세대 신도 처음에 센저에 로 회사 말에 대체 대체 세대 다나 좀 절대 세대 엄마 무슨 게 진짜 발전이 뭐래 홍이 가서 되는지 다 대체 뭐를 주야게 실 그이 줘라 봐 주이때 아니 제가 자자다이나라 차이나라 알아이나라 시야마다 대상아이나라 쇼는 시야지는 시야마다 대상아 그 주이래 그 주이때야는 호송 진일렀네 홍이 전이 지어져서 저만 매기 받아 는 다음에 받아도 봐 너 상보를 주야도 저만 매기 받아 저만 이거 뭐를 줘 그래 어떻게 아니 엄되게 자발미 가서 뭐 줘야 돼 자발 뭐를 줘 그래 아되게 되니 대충 뭐 주문도 뭐 아래 내 매매지 됐어 아니 처음 배치 됐어 자반 배시 됐어 대충 뭘 주문도 아래래 봐 자데 동동물 두이 제라베지 나 송게 진질랩네 아니 가서 뭐 줘야 돼 자반 뭐를 줘야 주문 매기부터 주문 이보 뭐를 줘야 너무 봐도 너 상보 뭐 줘야 아니 그런 제 대충 뭐를 줘야 내바가자는 나서라로야 아니 처음 배치에 대해서 상보 아니 세리도 생각이 제레요바 아니 자반 비시에 대해서 상보 아니 자면 뭐래야 주도야 근데 봐야 돼 어떻게 되다 또 줘야 돼 아디 다 아디 손도 줘야 봐면 세월에 손도 줘야 봐면 또 세일하래 제가 세일에 비트나 그전에 아니 대성 뭐를 대성 생각하다 아침에 세일 돼서 사는 용도와 어체를 못 써야게 어떻게 봐야 돼 근데 저래 제가 가봐 누가래 가봐 말해 가봐 이나는 많이 가는 내가 가는 걸 가봐 말해 어떠세요?
So Amrita in Sanskrit, which translated into Latin as a Dutsi. So first of all, to become something that is Dutsi or Amrita, there should be a certain substances which can be transformed into Dutse, transformed into Amrita, or which we normally, translate in English as a nectar. I always like it. It's called elixir of immortality. Elixir of immortality. So it's just more. It captures the actual meaning of the Dutse. Normally, if we translate just a nectar, it's kind of a delicious. That doesn't make much sense. But we, most of the time, again, we use it as a nectar instead of elixir immortality. So, so first there should be something, the substance that need to be transformed. It needs to be transformed by means of practice. It cannot be just mere. This cannot be transformed just mere reciting mantras and chanting. It will not happen because rigorous meditation process is involved, right? So then we have, depending on which classes of tantra that one is practicing. In this particular, that we are completely in a Vajrayana class right now. We're talking about Vajrayana. It's not such practice doesn't exist in the Sutrayana. So then depending upon which classes of Vajrayana that one is practicing, the way in which we practice and transform those substances into that is depending upon the differences depending upon which classes of tantra that we are practicing. But the common among all is the three syllables of Mahum. That's the main transformer that by whom syllable it actually purifies its colors and colors, and then also there's impurities are be purified by the whom. Here now the substances also differs because if it is a different, but high silver tantra substances, we first generates, mentally generates the 5 myths and 5 nectars. Those are all something that is not eatable. It's a very nasty things that we generate first. And this needs to be transformed by means of what practice, right? So then by whom it actually transforms all those colors and its looks and so forth, and also the smells and so forth can be transformed by means of whom, and the syllable will the main thing that transforming the substance into Amrita or the Dutse is syllable and then Om will increase furthermore, and it becomes inexhaustible. And it's Om Ahum. So therefore, then it says this: once it is transformed into the actual nectar, then it becomes the medicine for sickness, and the medicine for longevity, and then also as well inexhaustible, uncontaminated nectar is what's called. So, so the is the main syllable that actually transforms this into nectar. Is the represents represents the speech vajra. It's Amitabha vajra, speech vajra. So Amitabha is the is a deity of longevity. So, so I represent Amitabha, and Amitabha appears in the form of syllable R, which, descends and drops into the nectar, that then drops into the substances that is to be transformed into nectar, will be transformed by means of the syllable R. And so this is how the process of transforming whatever the substances that may be into Amrita, but this is not again here, this Amrita is nothing to do with clear light.
Oh, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not a, it's,
So the indestructible, when he was talking about the indestructible, it seemed like, I associated that with the clear light of mind in the central channel.
no, it's not,
Okay,
that, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was mistaken. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's stop here, there's no need to get rid of it.
That's all.
Not to respond.
Nyebe pawe nyeda chenpa nang pundo zangpo nayang liye Tata gwenje jizo daro je gewa teta tamje rato Chesan jebe jawa tamje je